Hello my creative friends! I made this fun bright card for World Card Making Day, one of the challenges I was participating in, and I thought that I would kind of recreate this card but with more Christmassy colors. So let's get started. This card would be great with any scraps that you might use or need to use up. I'm going to start with a very vanilla base. It's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. It's kind of a, if you did it like this, it would be called a tent fold, but we're actually going to be going like this. But I'm going to set this aside for a moment. You can do this a couple of ways. In the original card, I did a base, kind of a light base, and then I matted it with that rich raspberry, the darker color. You don't even have to mat it. You could do this straight on your card, but if you wanted to do it with just a single mat, the very vanilla piece would be the very vanilla piece would be 4 by 5 1/4, and then your cherry cobbler or lucky limeade would just be 1/8 of an inch bigger. So 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. But I decided to double mat this. So this is still 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I've got a lucky limeade mat, and that is 4 by 5 1/4. The very vanilla piece is 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. And I ran it through the Big Shot with the square lattice embossing folder, but really any embossing folder will do. This one has, I think that's called the Argyle. Fancy fan would work, lacy brocade. Like I said, almost any would do. I just like a little bit of added texture in the background when I'm using a solid piece. So usually I will either use a background stamp, maybe stamp off and stamp on the background stamp, or like in this case, I'll use an embossing folder. Then you just take your scraps. Now I use scraps from the Festival of Prince Designer Series paper stack, and I've used a lot of scraps. I still have more to go, but look how much paper I still have in this thing. There is so much, and I love almost all of the patterns. Love them. So I'll be using these for a lot of Christmas cards, but this will be a great way to use up some of my scraps. In the original card, I believe these are 1-inch strips. You could have your strips be all different sizes. This time I went with 3/4 of an inch, and part of that was I wanted to double mat, and I knew that this was going to be a little bit smaller, so I just want to make sure that they all fit on there. Then you're just going to take your paper snips, and you can do banners, but what I decided to do was just a little bit of an angle at each end. And just try and make them different. They don't all have to be the same. You have a couple of options with the next step. You can take your, I don't know what this is called. It's either a mini mister or mini spritzer. That you can fill it with water and just spritz these, and when you get the paper a little bit wet, it helps it to crumble and crinkle easier. Or if you're like me and you already have some rubbing alcohol and some shimmer paint, you could also spray that on. It will give it some moisture. Or if you want to do what I did this with the first card, you just simply wad them up. So we've got this. I'm going to set this aside. The last thing you're going to want to do, unless you want to do the button, with this I just used a glue dot to adhere the button to my page, and I tied a bow and I used a glue dot to attach the bow to the button. But for this I'm going to stamp it. I think that when you're mailing cards, it's easier if you don't have the buttons. It can be cheaper and easier for the postal workers. So what I did was I took the mixed medley and I stamped this kind of like a snowflake, but it's going to look kind of like a wreath, I think, when I'm done. But I stamped it in Lucky Limeade, and then the Merry Christmas I stamped in Cherry Cobbler. And now I'm just going to take my 1 1/4 inch scallop circle punch to punch out my wreath. I love that Stampin' Up! Stamps fit so perfectly in the punches, and that they're so easy to punch out. Okay, and then this is the 3/4 inch, and I'm just going to punch the Merry Christmas out. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside. Now, let's begin assembling our card. So we've got the base of our card. I'm going to start with the bottom layer, which is Cherry Cobbler, and just run your snail. Then you're going to take your Lucky Limeade piece and snail that. So to adhere the texture piece, I don't want to ruin the texture. So what I'm going to do is use some of this Tombow Mono Multi liquid glue. As you can see, I just unwrapped all of these, and they have a nice texture to them, and they have a lot of dimension and pop. Yet when you mail them, they'll kind of flatten down and be able to be shipped and mailed pretty easily. To adhere these, I'm just going to take a mini glue dot at the top and the bottom, or basically just where you've got to I guess it would be called valleys, so just where you want it to go down. Let me do this so you can see how much dimension is in there. Okay, so I'm just going to put glue dots on all of these and adhere them down. I decided I want a little more pop of color for this, so I pulled out my 1 3/8 inch circle punch and punched out a Cherry Cobbler cardstock. Now I'm just going to adhere this to this. Just to give this a little more dimension, I'm going to take some Cherry Cobbler ink and a sponge and just sponge the edge of this small circle. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but I was able to just get around where that dotted line is all the way around. And I'm going to attach this with a dimensional. And then attach this with a dimensional or two. And just like that, you have a simple, easy, fun card for Christmas that uses up your scraps. So I hope you find this helpful. I hope you'll try this and put your own spin on it. I'd love to see what you come up with. Hope you find some time today to get a little creative. Thank you for joining me. Bye.